Hello and welcome to KennyRoy.com. I'm Kenny Roy. This is the lecture for the month of September 2014. It's called the Quick Quad Run. I got so excited and so inspired coming back from Czech Republic and doing creature animation with those fine folks out there in Europe that I'd come back and spread a little bit of the love. Obviously, a creature curriculum is a pretty intense and full-featured thing to get into. But I did want to show you guys this. Wanted to because workflow is so essential. Gosh darn it all, workflow is so essential. There, I went 60 seconds without saying the word workflow in this video. Almost 60 seconds. All right, well, it's a personal record for me. I'm proud of it. But let's move on. If you've seen the Quick Quad Walk, you know that I'm pretty simple with my quadruped walk cycle workflow. But when a quad run came up during the course, I think I realized that the way that I described stride length can be described in another way that might be even clearer as to why it's essential and how to move forward quickly with your work using stride length. So let me kind of give you a rundown of what that means. What you know from any walk cycle that I've done, there's a male and female walks lecture. There's the Quick Quad Walk. I think there's another walk cycle lecture, and anything you've seen in How to Cheat in Maya or Sam's Teach Yourself Maya. Stride length is basically the distance that all of the world IK movers travel in one cycle. Okay, it's the distance they all go, and it is found very, very simply. It is found by measuring the distance that 1 foot takes and doubling it. And now, why does that work? Well, the way that I described it in all of the stride length or all of the bipedal lectures may have been a little bit misleading. I think now, because what I basically said was your leg is traveling and your body is traveling, and when you take one step, that accounts for the distance that your foot travels when it takes a step, and then you have to account for the other step. But when you're doing a run and the feet aren't on the ground for very long, that kind of explanation breaks down. The workflow is the same, but the explanation kind of breaks down. And the reason is because when you're doing like a quadrupedal run, the feet are on the ground for 1 or 2 frames. All right? And why it works with 2 legs for you to find the distance of 1 step and double it is because if you imagine that the body is moving forward the whole time, then a foot that is planted is basically going to determine the speed of that body. Meaning, as the foot is planted in front and it moves to the back, that's the same speed that the body is moving forward, essentially. All right, taking that planted foot as your point of reference. Okay, so think of it as in the ground is moving underneath your character at a certain speed, like it's a treadmill. And when you plant that 1 foot, it doesn't matter that the foot is planted or the foot is lifted. The ground is going underneath your character at a constant speed. And in a bipedal walk, the distance that if you calculate the distance of that 1 step and you consider that one foot's going to be down for half the time and the other foot's going to be down for the other half the time, then one step represents half the distance that the character is going to move. All right, because that foot's going to lift and the other one is the ground's still going to be moving underneath that character. So you double it. Now you get pretty close by doubling it. You get pretty darn close. Obviously, it's not absolutely perfect or exact because, for instance, in a bipedal walk, you want those feet to be on the ground for 1 or 2 frames together, where you plant this one and this one is coming up and then it plants, and then this one is coming up and then it plants, and then this one comes up and then it plants. So there's at least 1 or 2 frames of overlap of where both feet are on the ground. You don't want this one to plant and immediately this one comes up. That's the kind of like the hallmark of a beginner animator's walk cycle is running into that kind of issue. Okay, so anyway, so getting back on track. So instead of thinking of the stride length as just the distance that is stepped, think about it as the speed of the ground underneath the body as the character is walking, and the number of frames that the foot is planted out of the hole is the stride length. So let's just go back to the biped example one more time so that it's not confusing. If actually, it might be easier just to draw this out. Okay, let's do that. Let's do that instead. Okay, so if you have, let's say 24 frames, okay, and this is your timeline. Okay, just imagine this is 24 frames. If for half your cycle, one foot's on the ground, okay, let's say left, and this is right. But while your left foot is on the ground, your character travels, or in other words, the ground goes backwards 5 units. Then you double it because there's also going to be another 5 units right here. Right? This is disregarding the amount of overlap. Now, let's say this is a 24 frame cycle. Okay? Not too hard if this is 24 frames and this is 12 and 12. Okay? These two frame counts. Okay? But let's say you have your travel time is only 8 frames. It's not 12 frames, it's only 8 frames. So you add 4 frames. So it's actually the left takes 16 frames, like this, okay? And then this one, it would be 4 frames. It would loop over, sort of into the next cycle, your right foot. So here is the right. You guys like my dotted lines? It's amazing, right? Anyway, but it'd be 16 frames. All right. So, but what is 16 out of 24? It's 2/3, right? So if it still only travels 5 units, if that step is only 5 units, then 5 is 2/3 of what? Like 5 is 1/2, okay, of 10. Okay, 5 is 2/3 of what? All right, so we know from simple math. Well, you can just do it on your calculator. 5 divided by 2/3. Oops. Or you can just do divided by 0.6666666, and then you get 7.5. right? So 5 is 2/3 of 7.5. Okay, so using the one step and double it, I actually think that it gets you a little bit closer to what the real stride length should be. Here's why. Trying to find that stride length by taking that character and moving them down a little bit so that they're not, their knees aren't locked, and so that they're at a little bit more of a comfortable distance from the ground, that is a little bit more of an average of how high, that Y arc or that Y curve is going to be in the graph editor, taking into account foot roll and amount of or toe roll and how much knee bend is going to be involved there. It seems like you kind of get all of that range back in the very end. It might be a little bit on the hairy edge of too much with a quad walk. I've seen a little bit more trouble students run into a little bit more trouble using this with the quad walk. I mean, it's the same thing because quads are basically two bipeds walking one in front of another. Basically, it's the same thing. You just find the stride length for one, and then you just walk the other biped behind the other one. So, but at any rate, with a quad, it's a little bit more difficult to get that stride length, or when you double it for a quad, it's a little bit on the hairy edge of the maximum distance that you can use, but not if you think about it in these terms. So basically, what we're going to do is we're going to take this understanding of the new way to find a stride length, and we're going to apply it to a quad run. All right, but using the exact same workflow that we did in the quad walk, and I think you'll see that we very quickly get pretty darn good results. All right, and we're going to do this by taking a little bit of a note from our reference and seeing how many frames the feet are on the ground for, and in that I do have to say a little bit of a disclaimer. There are obviously a lot of cheats that go on that make it so that animation just works. So we wouldn't have a job if we had to make everything absolutely realistic, or it would be way too hard for anybody to actually do. And the thing that I'm specifically thinking about when I say that cheats are very much involved in this is the fact that a run, if you have learned anything from my contact lectures, a run has a lot of stuff that happens on the in-between frames. So technically a sprint or a gallop might have the feet on the ground for 1.5 frames, but we can't really work with that. So we're going to use basically a little bit of a cheat just to get it looking right, but still use stride length so that our cycle is created accurately so that it works forever, nothing ever breaks, even on frame 10,000, and we'll be constantly checking these things. Okay, nothing ever breaks, and it's always working, and everything's always looking good. Okay, so let's jump in, I guess. I'm going to be using this cute little fox rig that found online. Okay, and it's a free rig. You can get him. I think you just search on Creative Crash and he's there. Okay, cute little guy, and we're going to get started. Let me get my face out of the way. You guys don't want to see that. You shouldn't have to put up with that. Okay. So first thing always is to just quickly check. I know that it works, but I always do the same check, right? You grab all of the IK movers, you grab all of them at the same time, you move them forward, okay? and then you see, do they all have the same translate z value? Okay, negative 2.7, negative 2.7, negative 2.7, negative 2.7, negative 2.7. Okay, cool. Well, that's good. That's good news. We don't want to even start an animation if we're not absolutely certain that everything is working right. It looks like there are some driven keys actually on this model. Let me just make sure that nothing is going to screw us up here. Yeah, it looks like there's some driven keys. I'm going to see if I delete these if anything happens. Okay, cool. All right. So I'm going to say that this is a 12 frame, and from, basically from your reference, you should be gathering this kind of info. Okay, your research and your data gathering on your characters is super essential, and I'm going to make this a 12 frame, so it's a half a second for one stride. It's different for every character. It's different for a mouse and an elephant. Okay, I'll give you a little hint. The smaller the character is, quicker the run cycle. All right, that might not seem logical to everybody, but or that might seem like it's logical to everybody, but not necessarily. Okay, so we're going to go 12 frame run cycle. What does that mean? Remember, the first and last frame are the same, so you lose. Oops, sorry. You lose. I gotta always remember that. Come on. Don't hit the stupid button. You lose the last frame, basically. So a 12 frame run cycle is actually 13 frames. Okay, and first thing we're going to do is we're going to try to find that stride length. All right, it's the exact same thing as when we were doing it with the quad walk, but I'm going to think about it sort of the different way. So I'm going to bring him down a little bit. Okay, because if he's all the way up like that and everything is stretched out, that's not going to give us a good range to the ground. Okay, he can being a lot lower, or even not a lot lower, but just being lower, he's going to have a lot more range. Okay, and we're going to try to take into account everything. I'm going to grab all of the IK movers except one of them. Okay, the one that I'm going to keep zeroed. Also going to rotate this. We have to take a little bit into account with the ankle here. It's actually the foot. The ankle's up here, but and then just see if there's a little bit of roll. Yeah, probably can get away with even a little bit more. Okay, now I want to say something about quad runs, which is we get that image in our heads of the animal stretched completely out and then squashed completely together with like the arms and legs crossing like this. Like if you were going to do this in a pose based approach, you would probably like draw those two poses, right? Like totally stretched out and then the crunched up. The totally stretched out is not this pose. It's not this pose, okay? You get that pose in the air. The foot pushes off, okay? It comes back, okay? And it rotates even more, okay? So you see this pose? That's what you get, but it's not when it's on the ground. So right now I'm just testing the range of where this is on the ground. And we'll get to that, that super stretched out pose that you're used to, that you're seeing in your head. We'll get to that in a second. Okay? All right. Now, I'm going to say that the feet are down for 2 frames. It's a little bit slow. 1 frame for a fox is a little bit fast. All right, so it's like 1.5 frames for something the size of a fox. A cheetah, 1 frame is perfect. A horse, 1 frame is probably actually a little bit too slow. All right, sorry, a little too fast. It just depends on the speed of the creature as well. Okay, but I'm going to say that we're going to do 2 frames here. Okay, so gosh, I want to bring him down just a little bit more. Also, his hips. Let me see if this. Yeah, that's not what I wanted. His hips going to be rotated back a little bit and a little bit down. But I'm going to say that we're probably not going to get so much of an adjustment on the range of the feet using that controller that I need to put that in right now. Remember, it's always important to touch as few controllers as possible, and not try to overdo it. All right, when you're trying to find your stride length. Okay, now I'm going to move my foot. All right, as fast or as far forward as it possibly can go. Now, obviously, the body is moving forward too. Right, but if it's a 2 frame, stride, I'm going to, I'm not going to go too overboard compensating with the body as well, right? So we don't normally do this in a walk, because if you double the stride length, if you double 1 step, it takes into consideration, it kind of, let me explain this better. If you double 1 step, it negates the amount of movement forward that is being like added onto that step, because you also want to take a little bit of that stride out by having, the foot on the ground for like 2 frames while the other one has placed. Hopefully you see how those 2 things sort of like even each other out, right? So if I don't move one more time, if I don't move the body forward at all to compensate for how far forward the foot should be able to go, then it is the step that he's able to take right here is a lot shorter than it really can be. All right, because really, the body's moving forward and the foot is moving forward like this, right? And then I should be able to place this front foot. All right. So on a bipedal walk, what happens is, because you don't take that into consideration, your step is a little bit shorter than it should be, all things being considered, but then you only double it, but you have the feet on the ground for like 2 frames when they're overlapping each other. So the fact that the step is a little bit shorter than it should have been is made up for by the fact that you have the feet overlapping each other in terms of time on the ground. Hopefully that makes sense. If anyone is still confused after that explanation, I sincerely apologize, first of all. But second of all, email me. Let me know, or go into the forums and go into the lecture discussion and say, hey, did anybody get that? Because, man, now I'm more confused than ever. But at any rate, so we're not going to take into consideration too much of that effect, but we are going to take a little bit of it into consideration. So I'm going to move it forward just a hair, okay, just a hair. But actually, before I do that, let me do this. It's kind of easier to keep everything kind of organized if you put a keyframe on there. All right. So then I'm just going to move this forward just a little bit. All right. In the end, it's not going to be super, super important to get that absolutely right on the first try. Trust me. going on here? Seems like there's a weird like connection on here. Let me just break this connection. I have no idea what that is. It's working now? Thank you. Okay. So now we're going to put the foot as far forward as it can possibly go. Now listen, I'm not going to take into consideration too much of this. I added a little bit, but here's why. This is not where the foot lands on a quad run. It's just not. All right, a quad run, their legs land actually almost like underneath them. So even though I added just a little bit of juice up here, this is really like unrealistic in terms of how far forward it can land. So if you take that into consideration, I mean, oh boy, you've got kind of another thing that is helping you out. These things that are negating each other, that are kind of working for you. Okay, so this is kind of like a workflow that works in 3D and not really anywhere else. It doesn't work in 2D. You couldn't really do this in 2D. Okay, so we're going from 0 to about like -5. Okay, 0 to about -5. Now, what does that mean? That means that in 2 frames, so 2 frames down on the ground, all right, he is going to be traveling -5 units. 2 frames is -5 units. So out of a 12 frame run cycle, what does that mean? 2 is a 1/6 of 12, which means that his total stride is going to be about 30. Okay? I hope that makes sense. Let me explain that one more time. So his feet are on the ground. When we're doing like a bipedal walk, you have 1 foot on the ground, and just imagine, instead of all this discussion of like how they are stepping and moving forward, think of the ground being a treadmill that's constantly moving underneath them. And when you take a step forward and you're just counting the frames that are going by, all right, here we go, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, whatever, however many frames as that foot is planted on the treadmill, and then when you lift it, you stop it and you see, okay, in 6, let's say it's a 12 frame cycle, in 6 frames he went 5, the ground, the treadmill went underneath him 5 units. So let's just say 6 units for ease. So in 6 frames we went 6 units. So the speed of this is 1 unit per frame. So a 12 frame cycle is 12 units. That's 12 units is the stride length. I've got it. All right. And in a bipedal walk, in a bipedal walk, it just so happens that you're like left, right, and you can just find it for 1 foot and double it. With a quadruped, what we're trying to do is find the speed of that treadmill, regardless of how many feet are on the ground. Ostensibly, you could add as many feet as you wanted to a cycle, and this method would still work. This could be a 6-legged character, and the treadmill would still be traveling the same speed underneath them. Okay? So let me show it to you in kind of a different way. Okay? See these 2 keyframes? Oops. Who did I miss? You? You're 2 and 4. You're 2 and 4. You're still 1 and what? Come on. Okay. honestly. Gosh, who's still messed up here? How is this thing getting messed up like that? There we go. Jeez, that was just a battle. All right. Now watch this. If that wasn't clear for you, now watch this. Here is the. Let me get this other foot out of the way. Here is this foot. It's planting. Let's just say it's planting on frame 1, and in 2 frames, it travels. Boop. Boop. A distance of 5, right? Let me fix this. This one says -5. There we go. In 2 frames, boop, boop, like that. It travels a distance of 5. So that's 2.5 per frame. Okay? And now let's multiply 2.5 times 12. And you get 30. Okay? So we've found the speed. This is how fast the treadmill is moving. The treadmill of the earth is moving underneath him, no matter what's happening. If he's bouncing on one leg, then this is how it's working. You know, and ostensibly it could work, right? He could be pushing off with just this one leg, and then, you know, leaping into the air, and at the end of the cycle, coming down and landing again, and then, boom, landing on this, and it, you know, pushes off and jumps, and it looked really stupid and weird, but presumably you could work out a walk cycle that works like that. Okay? So there you have it. So let me just zero everything again. And now we know that our stride length is 30. We're going to do the same thing that we've always done. Okay? Now remember, I'm all about workflow. It is all about workflow. There is nothing that should replace your very calm, very relaxed method of creating the steps, the keyframes. I'm not sure how well developed I had this when I was doing the like male and female walks or whatever, but the workflow for adding these steps is the same for all the steps, and so I do it at all the same time and then offset them all. Okay, so let me show you how that works, and we will get it done. Okay, very, very, very simple. Okay, here we go. So remember, all of the IK movers in a walk cycle or run cycle move the exact same distance in one stride as each other. They all move the same. There's no exceptions. Now, which one of these? It's got this weird like constraint on these. Let me just break connections on all of these. I don't know why they're constrained. It's just very weird. Is this one constrained? No. Okay, good. All right, so we're going to create them all at the same time, okay? So they're on the ground for 2 frames, okay, which means they're still for 2 frames, and then they travel a distance of 30 units. So let's just put that in real quick, okay? Grab all 4 feet and the root. All right. I'm actually going to bring the root down so that it is not so it's not super stretched out and weird. Okay, so on the ground for 2 frames, 1, 2. All right, set a key. All right, so he's on the ground for 2 frames, and then travels 30 units. Right, so translate Z is -30. For some reason, this one is a weird guy. He's got this negative Z space. It should be positive. Then what do? Grab that root, delete the that second key we didn't need, make this linear so that when we move the master controller the other way, All right, I'm going to make this positive 30. They work against each other. Now let me also make this linear, and now you have it. Okay, so now you have your character moving the right distance. All of the feet have been, the stride has been added to all the feet. It's working right. And now when you're playing back, remember the first and last frame are the same. So when you're playing back, you should watch only the frames that are changing. So 1 to 12, right? So not 1 to 13, because 1 is the same as 13. You don't want that double frame, right? See, here's 1, here's 13. You don't want to see that. What I like to do is to immediately watch or change my range to 2 cycles. All right, so I'm going to change it to 24. All right, that way, first of all, 12 and 24 are the same, right? Here's 12. Actually, I haven't cycled it yet, but 24 will be the same. But as I'm offsetting legs and arms and torsos and tails and whatever, I can be sure that even if I've offset it a lot, I will still be able to see those keys on my timeline. I won't have to go into negative frames or anything like that. Okay, so now let's grab all of these guys again, go into the graph editor, and make the pre and post infinity curve types cycle with offset, which is the second button right here and the second button right there. Now it's going to make everything cycle with offset, which is fine, because we can make the rest of them cycle when it comes time to. But if you look and you zoom out, everything should be lining up perfectly. There should be no like spreading apart of these curves. They should always look the same. All right, and they do. All right, so we're doing good okay so far. All right, we're doing fine so far. Now, traditional wisdom would be to make it so that we're deciding which one of our feet is going to be like forward and back on a quad walk at a certain moment, so that we can get that footfall pattern. But if you do your research enough and you know how it works, well, like I know that on this particular quad, that the footfall pattern actually just goes around in a circle. All right, it goes back, right, back, left, front, right, back, left, front, right, and so on. It just goes around in a circle. I also know that there is considerable time in the air. And so because we've only chosen... Oh, and here's another way that you can kind of start thinking about the... what do you call it? Thinking about the foot on the ground concept. If your feet are on the ground for only a certain amount of time in the cycle, that inherently dictates the kind of cycle that you're doing. So for instance, a bipedal walk, I almost said biped again, a bipedal walk where you have 24 frame cycle and each foot is on the ground for 16 frames, you know that it's a walk. Why? Because one's planted and the other one's planted for 4 frames before. There's only 8 frames of travel time. Okay? So the 2 feet are never going to be off the ground at the same time. But if I'm saying this is 12 frames and each step is only 2 frames, and they're only going to be offset from each other by 1 frame, the 2 back and the 2 front. So that means at maximum, the back legs are going to take 3 frames. The front legs are going to take 3 frames. And that's a maximum of 6 frames that are taken up with all the feet on the ground. That's maximum. Okay? So that means we have 6 frames of airtime at least 6 frames of airtime. So you know, okay, it's 12 frame cycle, and how long are your feet on the ground for? 2 frames? Oh, well, it's a run, right? If you think about it in that way, maybe you'll maybe start, you know, you'll get a good idea of how to use this workflow kind of like to your advantage, how to make, you know, maybe bigger decisions or more, you know, stronger moves by using that. So at any rate, so I'm gonna choose which foot is planting. I'm gonna say that this foot is planting first. All right, so it's planting on frame 1, and when it's planting, what does that mean? It means that, you know, it's as far forward as it's going to be ever compared to the body. So I'm gonna plant it like right here. Okay, and these controllers need to start being animated as well. So this one's right here, and then in 2 frames, yikes, needs to be all the way back, and this needs to be like all the way up. In fact, it looks like we might be pushing it just a little bit too far. 30 might be just on the hairy edge. I'm sure I could lower this a little bit and maybe get that range back. Also, my stupid pole vectors are really giving me grief. Let me pull these out a little bit. Pull these out just a little bit. And I'm not sure if they travel with the body. Oh, it looks like they do. Okay, cool. Oh no, it looks like they don't. I don't know if they do or they don't. Whatever. I'm just going to... Maybe they move with the feet. I don't know what they're doing. You know what? I'm gonna delete these. I'm just gonna trust that they're actually doing what they're supposed to be doing. Yeah, they're staying in front. Okay, they're staying in front. Anyway, so all right, so this is fine. The fact that we kind of may have pushed it just a hair too far, not a big deal. All right, how do we fix that? It's very simple. Okay, I'm going to just grab all these. All right, instead of this being -30, let's just bring it back in a little bit. Let's just do -25 instead. All right, and this one make +25, and we're done. All right, that's literally it. How easy is that? Super easy. I'm here to tell you. Okay, so let's key both of these, and then in 2 frames, yeah, seems like we're getting just the hairy edge of that range right there. That's pretty good. I would say it's pretty darn good. Okay, so so there we go. There's that foot coming up off the ground right there. Okay. Want to make sure that the leg, the knee, and the foot are always parallel if you can. Okay, so this one's at an angle kind of like this. So we kind of want to match them up a little bit like that. Okay. And now, obviously, the foot needs to not fly off like that. Let's zero these and get the foot working for us as soon as possible. Okay. And build that pose that we're looking for, right? Where it comes off the ground. And it might do a little bit of a, you know, like a flap like this. But I'm not going to get too crazy about that. Let me set a key right here, set a key on 13, bring these up. Backwards and forwards is cycle. There we go, it's working nice. Oops. Let me just make sure that only the translate Z is cycling with offset here. All right, that's working. And now these need to cycle back and forth. And let's just make sure. In fact, remember what you can do. If you ever have trouble, you can always copy the animation and fix it by doing the math operation plus equals whatever you need to in the graph editor. Man, this knee really is freaking out. Sometimes you have to do a little bit of work to make these things happy. Is that gimbal locking or what is happening there? Oh, these are not. My bad. Okay, set. All right. So these needed to actually know that the first and the last frame were 1 and 13. So the rotation was happening, you know, like on frame 8, because like frame 7 was the last frame right there for a second. Okay, so here we go. All right, let me just make sure that this is all right. All right, so this is not right. So what I have to do is I have to copy this, paste it on -13, and make this minus equals 25. Everything else was 25, but I mistakenly grabbed this foot and I made this one's value -25, even though I had moved it up. But it's okay. See, there we go. There's the right value. And so maybe just before it lands, we want it to be up in the air and reaching forward like that. Probably not that much. Okay. Just like that. Okay. Now, what did I say? I want the two legs offset by each other just by 1 frame. All right. So let me grab this, make it 1 frame later. Go to that frame. This is the contact frame. What does that mean? That means that, oops, this is going to be as far forward on this frame as it ever is. All right, so let me find out where that is. And now I should be able to, because these were not created opposite each other, I should be able to copy all this animation to the other side. Let's see if I can. Edit. Keys, copy, below, copy, and then grab these other ones in the same order, keys, paste, and oops, I did it on frame 3 instead of frame 2. So I can just go like this, slide it back 1, there we go. These are both a cycle, hit those 2 buttons, and then on frame 2, oops, keep on doing that, so I apologize. On frame 2, we're just going to grab the translate Z and fine-tune that contact point. In fact, what we can do is we can just see, we can eyeball it. Things don't need to be absolutely perfect in animation here. So that's a little bit further forward than his buddy is on the other side. Okay. Now let me make sure that this is -4, so it should be about -29.1. Yep. All right, so that stride length is working out great. Okay. This guy, let me just make sure. 0 and 25, okay. Working nicely. Just grab, translate Z, still cycle with offset, and always be checking. You know what? I'm not gonna just rely on, you know, just anything. I'm gonna zoom out here and make sure. Oh, see, we have a little bit of spreading going on. One of these guys is not moving like the other. So which one is it? Right? And sometimes you will never ever figure out why this is happening, but there you go. So let me see here. All right, so it is this one. All right, and so this one is off for some reason, but I'm not going to fool around and try to diagnose why it's happening. I'm just going to fix it. All right, so that's right, and now I'm just going to drag, set a key, go back to my graph editor, go to translate Z. I don't care what this is, just minus equals 25. And that should be working. Oops, don't forget to make sure. No, it looks good actually. Oh boy. Just make sure that there's no weird scales going on. Okay. Looks like we're having just a little bit of a fight here with this back left leg for some reason. Let me just see here. There you are. 2 to, oh no, it's not 2 to 13, it's 2 to 14. Okay, so I just grabbed the wrong keyframes, and sometimes that's how it works, man. Sometimes that's what happens. So it should be 2 to 14, 2 to 14. This is 2 to 14. All right, so let's see. Let's just make sure. Let's grab this guy and zoom out. Yep, now they're buddies. Okay. Now it doesn't look like the animation actually copied across great for these two. Honestly, it doesn't look like it. It looks honestly like the. Maybe I can do them one at a time. Let me just see if I can do them one at a time. Copy keys. Keys, and let me just delete them all. Paste keys. That seemed like it worked better, didn't it? Copy keys. Copy. Oops, I hit cut. Crap. Copy. Delete all this. Frame 2. Paste keys. Does it seem like it worked better now? Yeah, there we go. Yeah, this looks like it's working better. Okay. So let me make sure that these are cycles. No, they are. Still getting something weird. This guy has rotation on him. That's what it is. I wonder if I can. Let me see if I can do it this way. Just out of curiosity. Let me just see if I can do it in the graph editor. Copy, translate Y, and all 3 rotates. Translate Y, all 3 rotates. On frame 2, edit, paste. Let's just see. I don't know if it's going to work. Oh, not bad. And it's got a little bit of wonkiness, but that's okay. Cleaning this up is not a big deal at all. Like that. Oops, I lost my graph editor. There we go. Whew. That was close. Let's also cycle this back and forwards. Ooh, and this is supposed to be 2 to 14, not to 16. What's happening here? Set, delete, delete, delete. Here we go. Okay. Just trying to keep very, 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 very pragmatic and methodical as you're working forward. Not doing anything out of order. Not taking any breaks. Don't wait for something to get all screwed up before you take a closer look at it. Okay. Like this rotate X. 2 to 14. Okay. Now we're going to work out all of that. Don't worry about the ranging on that foot. Don't worry about it at all. Okay. Ooh. So the translate Y is messed up here too. Okay. Same thing with the front feet now. Okay. Same thing. We're going to grab this one. Now on the stretched out, we're going to say that, I don't know, 6 frame airtime. Let's start this front one on frame 10. Okay. Alright, so let's move this all to frame 10 and move it up until it's at the right spot. Alright, so 10 to 23, right? Actually, no. 10 to 22. And then this. Yeah, we probably actually get a little bit more range out of that. Let's see. Let's see. Just a little bit. Let's just try it. Okay. Might be pushing it. Might be pushing it a little bit much, but remember, you have all sorts of tools like this, like the shoulder to work with. So there's a lot of ways to make the range work. All right. So I'm just going to keep this as the range. 1, 2, and by now, set, and by here, way rotated. In fact, his foot is pretty much like almost off the ground like this, and then it comes up. And in general, the legs are always going to go outside of the arms, so you can actually take these and grab the translate X and move them out just a little bit, not too far, not too far, and then bring these and bring them in just a little bit, just a little bit. But that pull vector is killing me. My goodness. It's just killing me. Okay. So what did I say, 10? Yeah. obviously this is supposed to be 0. And this is supposed to be 0. And this is supposed to be 0. Oh, was it supposed to be 0? No, it wasn't supposed to be 0. There we go, like that. Okay, cool. Now let's copy these. These are cycle, backwards and forwards. This guy, cycle, backwards and forwards, and then take the translate and then fix it to be offset backwards and forwards. Honestly, I'm not sure why I'm having to fix this one so often. But c'est la vie, right? Doesn't really matter. Let me just make sure that these are all now looking like they're supposed to be. There we go. Okay. Now these keys, right? You gotta be a little bit careful to make it look good. Anyway, we'll fix the range of these things in a minute. And now, what did I say? 1 frame offset. Let's just quickly do this other one. This front right. So frame 11. And now let's find where it's supposed to go. Where are you? There you are. And let's just use frame 10 as an example, okay? So it's about right here, right? On screen. Okay, like that. Easy enough, right? Frame 11. Let's grab you. About right there. Right. 11 to 23. One, two. Delete this grease pencil. Uh-oh. Maya froze. Come back, Maya. Come back. I'm going to take this second to say a prayer to the Maya gods and just hope and wish that it comes back. If it doesn't, I will switch over to the finished version of this run that I've already done, and you'll be able to see with just a little bit of cleanup and sort of customization of the rotations and those controls on your quadruped that really affect the range. You can actually pretty quickly get to the result you need. But this is all, once again, starting from stride length and starting from, a point where the oh, it came back. Lucky. Starting from a point where the workflow was standardized, right? So let me just copy these keys, paste on 11, copy keys, paste on 11, cycle back and forth. Y and all the rotates, copy. Y and all the rotates, paste. Is that on 11? Cycle forward and back. Oh, it inserts it. Oh, that's probably how it got messed up the first time. any rate, let me just make sure that this is 11 to 23. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Now, ostensibly, you've been watching me animate this. Now, ostensibly, on frame 10,000, we shouldn't have any crazy flipped out arms and legs. But when I click on 10,000, if there are, it's very easy to fix. So I don't want you to freak out if there is. Let's see. Nope, still running. Still doing his thing. Okay. So, the things, let me really quickly run through because I don't want to go too long on this one. The things that you're going to do next are the things that are going to, in the greatest way, impact the range of the character. So what would those things be? Those would be things like the rotation on the hips in the back and the front. Remember my offset workflow, so I'm just going to hit set and set on 1 and 13, okay? Because I know that's my range. I'm going to bring it in here, copy and paste it, frame 7, bring it out here, all right? Make it cycle forward and back, and then figure out where it goes. I'm not going to judge where it's going to go until I get the animation in there, and now I'm going to see where it goes. That's the opposite of a pose-based workflow. It's the opposite. I know the motion that needs to go into the hips. I create that motion, then I place it in time. All right, and it's not bad actually, but it probably should be, maybe let's try 1 frame earlier. Not bad. Okay, same thing in the front. Frame 1. Bent over. Set, frame 7. Extended like this. Pretty much going to have the exact same motion on this, although if they're offset 1 frame, that might be actually a little bit better. Okay, a little bit of up and down in the body. Right, when he's in air. Okay, so this is probably good for the Y. Grab the Z, don't forget, minus equals 25 on the Z, but the Y needs to cycle backwards and forwards. It's nice to get a little bit of rotation as well in the overall body. What it does is it kind of creates a little bit more connectivity in the the front and the back. So we can do that just by, I already know actually that the motion is going to be rotate X. And I can just figure out, how much that needs to be. Cycle forward and back, like this, and then figure out, just place it in time. So when he's stretched out like this, like maybe 1 frame later or 2 frames later is when I want him to be leaned up, and I don't want him to be leaned up that much overall. Actually, maybe I want him leaned up a little bit more, like that. But now he's just too high. So more up and down, but lower overall. It's getting there. It's getting there. I'm going to switch over real quick to the one where we started. and you'll see. So basically, the hips and the body movers, especially translate Y and rotate X, really greatly affect the range on those controllers. Really greatly affect the range. And then things like shoulders on the forearms and the bend of the ankles and feet of the back legs will sort of round out the amount of range that you have. Then counter animate the, don't do it in a pose way though. Create the two sort of like extremes in the graph editor and then just move it in time where it's supposed to go, but counter animate the neck so that the head stays looking forward. Let me mute this so you see. There we go. And this looks like it has one more frame of offset actually in the two front feet. That might be too much. But this was literally with about 5, maybe 10 minutes more work than you saw. And because it is a entirely stride length based approach and an offset based approach, there was basically no posing that went into this, even though we go through, as you can see, a lot of the classical poses that you might build if you were doing a run cycle like this. But let me go to frame 10,000. Still working perfectly. Okay. Thank you for checking this out. I basically wanted to give you guys kind of an update on stride length and sort of a different way to apply it in your heads. So just to really quickly recap that, before with the bipedal walk, I was saying take one step and basically find the range between the backmost pose on one foot. Well, leave that foot at home so you can just start at 0. But then as far forward as he can take a step, that's one stride, or that's one step. Double it, you get the stride length. Another way to think about it is that the ground is always constantly moving underneath them, whether their feet are down or not. So when the foot is down, all you have to do is calculate how far does the treadmill go in how many frames, and then you have your speed. And then you multiply your speed by the number of frames you have, and you have your stride length. So kind of a different way of thinking about it. Well, not kind of. Definitely a different way of thinking about it. But I do think that for run cycles where the feet aren't necessarily on the ground for a long amount of time, this is a helpful way to start thinking about these cycles. So I really hope you guys got something out of this. The Fox rig is a decent one. I've seen a couple quad rigs on Creative Crash. You can try this out with, and let me know about your results. Post in the forums or ask me a question by email. Look forward to seeing you guys try this out and get some quad runs on your reels. Okay, I've had a lot of fun. This has been great. Thanks a lot for watching. As always, rock on.